back, and today I will be making a video about the 8 legendary weapons in the game, my personal ranking, and overall which I find to be the most useful and beneficial. So to start off, there are a total of 8 in the game. I am level 30, so these are all maxed out, so can't really make a level difference there. They're all the same level, so whatever they are now is their peak. I have added stuff to them, but they all have damage in. They all pretty much have the exact same perks, they're the same level, and yeah. So this should be a pretty fair comparison. There shouldn't be like a lot of bias here. So here we go. First of all, number 1 for the one that is the most useful and can easily kill your enemies goes to the body count. I want to put number 1 for the body count here because not only of how easy it is to get in the game, being one of the best weapons in the game, it's the best machine gun or just gun in the game in general. It is extremely easy to get. There is hardly any effort in acquiring this gun, like really at all. You do 2 side missions. You complete the story and you complete 2 side missions, which compared to the rest of the other ones is not a lot, because getting the other ones, such as the Krakatoa and the 1, are really hard to get compared to the AK-47 or the body count. And for how easy it is to get, just convenience and just general weapon and damage, this is the best out of all the legendaries in my opinion, because it shreds through enemies' health. I've defeated tons and tons of bosses for helping people in a matter of like seconds. It just shreds through health. It makes the game like 10 times easier if that's what you're interested in. It uses assault rifle ammo, obviously, which isn't hard to get, and it inflicts bleed damage. Although it might not do as much damage as, say, the Brutalizer or this, technically the damage is like somewhere in the middle for this, but since it shoots so rapidly and each individual bullet does that much damage, it's really strong. So for that reason, I'm putting it at number 1. Number 2, I'm going to have to say Emma's Wrath. Now this could have been number 1 if only it was a bit more useful than number 2. It does have the most damage out of all of them at a solid 1,675, I think. Actually, the Big Shot does the most damage, but in terms of melee weapons, this does the most damage. It is extremely useful. It has tons of damage, obviously. It is a 2-handed weapon, so it's a bit slower, but when you do hit people with it, it is absolutely catastrophic. It is a bulldozer. It works perfectly, and if you hit them enough times, you get this little shotgun effect that basically produces a shockwave that causes extra damage. So it does have a few extra perks to it other than just being a hammer. Also, the best hammer in the game. Realize that. Number 3 is going to have to go to the Big Shot. It is a grenade launcher. The only weapon in the game that shoots explosives, I believe. I haven't seen any other weapon in the game that just shoots explosives. And by explosives, I mean these. Yeah, explosives. It's the only weapon in the game that does that. The closest thing to this is maybe putting a fire mod on a gun, but this is like an actual grenade launcher. And you can probably see why it's number 3, but it's still not as useful as the body count or Emma's Wrath, simply because it runs out really quickly. The reload speed is really slow. Even though I do have a tactical reload mod on this, it still reloads really slow, but it is really good. It does tons of damage. As you can see, it does the most damage, and it uses shotgun shells, which is a tad bit harder to get than, you know, the body count. It also has like a really bad fire rate, accuracy, and magazine size. So for that reason, number 3. Going on to number 4. Number 4, I'm going to have to say probably the Krakatoa. Aesthetically, this really looks good. Like, if I was to say rank this from a worst looking, or from best looking to worst looking weapon, this would definitely be the best looking weapon. Now, not for just that reason it's number 4, but because it also actually performs well. On top of looking really cool, it does tons of fire damage, and it, just like all the other weapons, it comes with the superior form, or you could say the best form of what that has. So the Krakatoa already comes pre-installed with the best fire mod you can possibly have on a weapon, and it also looks really cool. This thing makes me kind of feel like the Grim Reaper, and it tears people to shreds. The only time it isn't useful against fire enemies, but all the other legendaries can make up for that. But other than that, this is really good. It does tons of damage, and it shreds through people. And it's every 2 or 3 hits, somebody will just simultaneously combust and burn to death. So I think that's a really cool feature. It pre-installed onto the weapon itself. Number 5. Gonna have to go to the Blood Rage. Now, some people would argue the Blood Rage needs to be higher ranked. My opinion, I just don't find myself using it as much as the other 4. It is still a really good weapon, but in my opinion, it's just sorta kind in the lower 4 in terms of the 8 weapons. It does blood damage, which the AK-47 does as well, but it's the only other legendary that does blood damage. It is really good. It does 1,000 damage, so it's definitely not the lowest damaging here. It has max durability. Its speed is kind of slowish, and its force is pretty low, so you won't be able to really force it. But the force of pretty much every other weapon is really high. For example, the force of Emma's Wrath is 46, compared to 9 on here, so not really getting a lot of force, but it does do a lot of blood damage, and when you can get a hold of a zombie, you can like stab them in the face with it, and definitely does a lot of damage. Anyways, moving on to number 6, I'm going to have to say probably number 6 is gonna go to the 1. Although this is arguably, in my opinion, the hardest weapon to get out of all 8 of these. Thinking just plainly here, you have to do around, what was it, like 3 or 4 missions to get the Krakatoa, 6 or 7 to get the Brutalizer, only around 2 to get the body count. You have to complete the story to get this, so I guess technically this is the hardest to get. But the party starter, which only takes 1, the body count, not the body count, the Blood Rage, which I think only takes around 2, and the Big Shot that only takes 1 mission. It is a hard mission, but it's only 1 mission. Granted how difficult this is to get, definitely harder to get than really like any of the other ones, it's disappointing to say how low I ranked it. Because it doesn't do well. I can't describe it. The Brutalizer is better than this. It has the same type of damage type, so it has like the best version of like a melee, but the Brutalizer does it a lot better, significantly better. Although it does look cooler than the Brutalizer because it's just a sword. You might have seen this in a movie because it's actually based off of an 80s movie that you might have seen before. Not gonna say what it is, but it is cool looking, but it just doesn't do damage. It just doesn't. It is good. It's a really good weapon. Just compared to the other legendaries, it's at a solid 7. So it's not that good. And in last place, I'm gonna have to put the party starter. it's the one you can get the earliest in the game. So obviously, you know, you would obviously assume it was the worst, which I kind of did too, but I didn't want to say otherwise until I acquired all 8 of them. But this is definitely the worst. If you're thinking about picking out the best out of all 8 of the legendary weapons, and you don't think you want to get all 8 of them, even if you just want like the experience points without even actually caring about the weapon, I would recommend probably getting the Krakatoa, the body count, Emma's Wrath, which you can just get from beating the game, so you're gonna have that, and you're probably gonna want the Big Shot. Those are the ones that are like really, really powerful, and they're the ones you're gonna want. Party Starter, I believe, does the least damage at a solid 877. Yeah, it does the least amount of damage, right next to the body count, actually. So it doesn't really do any damage. It doesn't excel in anything. Compared to the rest of these, they do pretty much better in almost every single category. So last one I'd probably recommend you getting is these, Party Starter. Anyways, that's my ranking of all 8 legendary weapons in the game. So if you like the video and want to see more Dead Island 2 content, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.